Source has been telling me that it's time to remember. Source is saying not only to remember, but to see what is stopping you from remembering. My name's Cheryl, and I had my spiritual awakening over 30 years ago. I talk about the ascension of the planet and my personal process of ascension. In my early 20s, I heard a call. The human didn't perceive it that way, but she heard a call. And she found a group called the Crimson Circle. And it was a group of many beings who had been in many different lifetimes together. And specifically, the time of Atlantis, including the fall. And these beings came together in this lifetime because at the time of Atlantis, the Earth could have had her ascension, but we didn't. Because we were misusing power and technology. And this group called Shambra, they were part of that time period. And because this process goes in a spiral, at the time of Atlantis, one spiral ended and another began. And that spiral is ending now. And the Earth, once again, and her inhabitants can do their ascension. So when I heard the call, Tobias, an ascended master, he said he played a trumpet to put the call out, but really the human, she found a website and on it was an ad for the Crimson Circle. And she had just had her awakening and she was very intrigued by others who spoke about spiritual awakening. And so she went and listened to this group. And it felt like home to her. She resonated. It was a feeling. Not a human knowingness that, oh, I found my tribe and I heard this call and we're coming together at this time on Earth. No, she didn't know. And I've spoken to a lot of people about my memories of Atlantis that are coming up. And they say, Cheryl, I don't remember. I don't remember anything. And that's why Source has guided me to speak to you about my process, because my human doesn't remember in a grandiose, magical movie type of way. She remembers in her feelings in her body, which is a technology. It guides us and speaks to us. She remembers with the resonance to people who talk about Atlantis. If you're watching this and you resonate with me, my frequency, then you were there. And this is a way to remember. So at that time, we were misusing technology, and I was part of that group, Shambra, who created a frequency headband that was not created with ill intention at the time, but eventually was misused. And that played part in a decision to reset humanity. My human, she didn't really know all these years, over 25 years, what that meant. But she knew that it was important. And there was a knowingness that there would come a time where it would come into balance. And that is why Shambra and all those involved came together in this lifetime, was to bring that experience to balance. So there was, even in this lifetime, and looking back, it's probably the separation of the two groups, those that survived the fall of Atlantis and those that didn't. And I always felt a tug on my body of emotions when interacting with different groups. Now, most of us weren't aware in this lifetime on a human level what happened and what was going on, but I do see now that those who didn't fall, those who they say remained sovereign and didn't perish in the demise, they carry a remembrance that those who perished didn't carry. And so maybe it was their karma or their dharma, or their desire to hold that information. But those on the other side also were holding information too, of the imbalance. And Source allows you to remember when you're ready. And that's probably why I don't remember fully what happened there. But Source did allow me to remember that I did know about the fall. And I chose to stay in the resonance halls and hold the coherence as long as I could. And then I fell with Atlantis. Now, my human right now, she doesn't truly remember why she did that. Was her frequency not high enough? Did she just choose to stay? Did God make the decision for her to stay? But she has all these emotions coming up right now. For example, I always felt a lot of guilt when I had teachers who had survived the fall say that, talk about the fall and how some chose to, quote unquote, jump into the waters and drown with their family. And maybe I did that. But only I know the reason. Nobody else. But I've had a lot of knowingness come up around it. And one was, I didn't choose my sovereignty. I chose to serve humanity and encode memory, the memory of what happened, into the grid of the earth. And I've carried that lifetime after lifetime. But what happens is we are creators and we create our reality based on what's going on inside ourselves. And I think for me and maybe many others who carry that memory, we probably haven't created a lot of fun experiences for the human. And I carried guilt. Guilt of not doing enough. Maybe Atlantis didn't have to fall. I don't know. Maybe my human thought that she could save it, that it wasn't necessary for it to fall. Because a lot of people lost their lives in Atlantis. So I've been working on the feelings coming up around memories of Atlantis, but like I said, they aren't grandiose memories, they're flashes of memory. Like a flash of what you had for dinner yesterday. Or a feeling. I wake up in the morning and Source, that's when Source communicates with me a lot, and Source is talking to me about that time, but specifically about what I carried and what now at the top of the spiral that I'm bringing to coherence, to balance. And I did have a thought this morning about, was I not good enough to survive Atlantis? Did God pick other people to survive because they were more important, or God loved them more? And Source said, that isn't sovereignty, Cheryl, those thoughts. That even at the fall of Atlantis, I still didn't truly remember that I was a creator. That there is a form, a power, a source that created all of us equal. All of us equal, with the same abilities, the same ability to remember that you are that form, that creator. But all of that constriction that I carried, those memories that I carried, there's another layer of forgetting that I am that force, that you are that force, that every one of us has always had the ability to remember. But being here on the planet, we had free will to play the game in the way that we played it, to forget. And all that stuff just got piled on, layer by layer, but I see it coming off now because it's time. And this time around, we need to not misuse our power or see someone else as not capable, because we all come from that force. So many waves of individuals coming from that source, but we return to it. And then we go out again and we return to it. So I remembered. And maybe I didn't remember in Atlantis. But this time I do. And I, then Source, want to remind you now, not as someone who survived the fall and had the ability to remember a little bit more than I did. I'm not saying that I couldn't have, but so much was piled on in that fall of Atlantis onto you, onto the human, that needed to unravel, come off. But Source is saying you can't remember. You're not going to be allowed to remember until your frequency is high enough. And maybe it's the same scale that was used in Atlantis when it fell. That those whose frequency hadn't reached a certain cutoff, they were the ones that wouldn't survive. Because if you don't attain a certain frequency, you may misuse your power. You may, if you remember, if that human is still not in a place to understand the unworthiness that is triggered, you might spiral. You might lose your mind. And that's why so many people are like, what does doing the inner work mean? It means looking at all those things within your being that constricts you. That when you're interacting with somebody and there's a constriction in, say, your solar plexus, which is what I got a lot. And instead of looking at it for many, many years, I hid from it. I might eat a lot of food, shove it down. I might distract myself with TV or other things or life. Until Source started taking away all my distractions. Because this is the time of the Ascension again. And Source wants you to remember. And Source wants you to see through my resonance and the reflection of my own understandings of what happened to me in Atlantis and maybe happened to you. And I was struggling to get out of that. And maybe you are too. So Source wanted me to share my story to remind you that you are the force. You are the source. Just like everyone else is. And that never stopped being that. What happened was we got layers and layers coming onto our being that made us forget. Tobias came in at the important part to remind you to remember. It's time. And you're safe now. And we're all going to remember together. And we're going to ascend this planet. Together we rise.